Okay, today on the bench we have a new project. This one is being done for a friend of mine who we'll say has more money than sense, because what we're doing is we're removing the movement out of a authentic mission to the moon MoonSwatch, and we're putting it in a metal case. That is easier said than done, because these are not serviceable watches. You can't remove the back to access the movement. These are glued shut from the front. So the movement is placed through the top, then the crystal is glued in place, and then the bezel is glued on top of that. So in order to get to that movement, it requires a level of destruction. And to do that level of destruction, we are going to have to use some unorthodox methods. No, not that. But it is going to be somewhat similar in the regards that we're going to probably have to use a Dremel, possibly a box cutter blade type situation. But more often, I think we're just going to use a screwdriver to pry into that and get into that. So before we start with all of this and destroying this really nice MoonSwatch, let's just take and have a moment of silence.
And may God have mercy on your soul.
Okay, now that we've done that, let's get into it. Okay, so before we start here, we're going to have to take off this band, and we're going to also, before we start tearing into the front, we're going to basically, in order to get this stem out, we have to cut an access hatch here in the back, which will expose a hole that we push into, and that removes the crown out of it. The other way is to cut the crown off with a Dremel, which we could do. I'm not sure what the best way to go is. I'm going to try cutting a hatch here first, and we'll see how that goes. That's going to be the first order of business, and then once we get that stem out, then we can try to start cracking this lens off, the bezel, and then the lens off. All right, well, let's say a little prayer and get busy.
God, if you listen, help!
Okay, it looks like we've accessed that hole to remove the crown. Got a lot of dust here. Trying to minimize the amount that got into the movement. Let's see if that little pinhole, which I'm trying to see if I can. There's a pinhole there. If you see it, that should release the stem. Let's find out if that works. All right, we have a small problem here. First of probably many. This hole, which I believe is the hole to release the stem, doesn't appear to. Let me try it this way. There we go. Did I get it? No. There we go. That worked. Okay. Whew, that was close. And initially I was trying to push into this little hole, which I don't know if you can see that or not, but it wasn't releasing the stem. But then I was able to latch it just right, and it pulled it out. So let's let's clean up this workstation and start phase 2, which is to remove the front. Okay, workbench cleaned up a little bit. Phase 2, which is equally as scary. I forgot to mention that with this stem, I knew that I wasn't going to be able to probably salvage the stem itself, and even if I was, this stem is not designed for the crown in the new movement. So I bought a new stem designed for what is in here is an ETA G10.212 movement. So we've got a new stem for that, and hopefully that's the right one. It appears to be so. So as we get in, that will be used. We'll have to cut that to length, just like any watch build, and so we'll go from there. So phase 2, let's get this out. There we go. That was pretty easy, right? Let's see how it goes from here. Looks like there's a couple little notches here. Let me try to get a small screwdriver in there to pry up. I'm going to be very careful not to damage the dial. That's what's most important in this whole process. All right, I got to admit, this is the scariest part because I do not want to damage this dial in any way. And one slip, and if this screwdriver goes in there, it is going to do such a thing. So, also, I'm not completely familiar with how this dial is being pressed down into the back of the movement. Whether there's some sort of spacer ring between the crystal and the movement, and then that presses it down, or whether the crystal itself is pushing against it. So if I try to get under this like this, there's a possibility if this crystal is directly touching that dial that I could really mess that dial up, and that's something I really don't want to do. I've seen a few other examples of how this was accessed, and it didn't appear as if the crystal was directly pressed onto the dial. And if you look, I don't know if you can see, but the dial appears to have some sort of a ring, a black ring on top of it. So I'll have to do some quick looking just to make sure. I'm looking at a picture now of a removal. I don't see a ring. There's only a few examples of this on the internet, and none of them are too comprehensive. So I want to take my time here. Okay, there we go. Now we've made some real progress. Okay, that's it. 0 damage to the dial. Let me try to get this centered on the camera. And the crystal has been removed. I can't see my... There we go. And the crystal removed. Right. So this now should hopefully drop right out. Let's find out. Be gentle with the... And it's not dropping right out. Okay, we'll do it the reason it's not dropping out is because I believe it's got some connection there to the to these pushers. Not connection, but it's, you know, involved in those. There we go. The movement is now very gently, very safely removed from the watch. No damage at all. I'm extremely happy with this. Now, not happy with the way this turned out because it's absolutely destroyed, but we expected that. It's a sad day. All right. Let me clean up this workstation and we'll move into phase 3. Okay, we're on to phase 3, which is basically finding out how to put this movement into the new case and have it fit well, have all the pushers and the crown, stem, etc. all line up in the proper places, and then do the final assembly of the watch, which means cutting the stem into the right length and just buttoning up the whole thing and putting the strap on, etc., etc. So the first part of that whole thing, and I've already done all this, but it is taking a lot of measurements. I have to measure the inside of the case. I have to measure the outside of the movement. I have to measure the depth of the case, the depth of the stem, where it hits into the movement. This basically is going to sit a certain height away from the face of the watch, and that stem has to line up perfectly with that. So all these things, lots of math, makes your head spin. But all these measurements come down to a process where I create a movement ring, a ring that goes between the movement and the watch and keeps that new movement steady, in place, centered, etc., etc. So that ring and the process to create this ring, I'll show you now. All right, basically I go into a program I call OnShape. It's an online program. It's a way to create 3D images that you can eventually export into an STL file and 3D print. So I've created this ring. It's got the notch to avoid the, basically on the left there, it's got that notch to avoid the stems and the pushers for the chronograph. And then there's also a small little notch on the 6 o'clock position to avoid there's a little pin on the movement. Then what I do is I export that as an STL file and I move it into a program called Ultimaker, Cura, and that lets me define some settings and some layer heights and some fine tuning for the file to go into the 3D printer itself. It shows you all the layers. It shows you how it prints it, and then you can export that into a file which the 3D printer can understand and use. Then you have this 3D printing. Everybody knows what a 3D printer is, but it's this amazing technology that lets you take, say, a roll of plastic and it extrudes it into whatever shape you want, as big as a helmet you can wear, or as small as a movement ring where you can center a watch in a new case, which is what we're doing here, of course. So, yeah, this is the process of that, and then we'll go to the next step. So the next step is going to be to use that movement ring that we just 3D printed and to put it on the movement and to put it in the case and see where we're sitting. As I said, I created a small little notch. I don't know if you can see it or not. It is at the 6 o'clock position. There happens to be a little, and I'm not sure if you can see this, there's a little nub there. I don't know why that's there. It's probably for some purpose that back when the movement was developed, it was necessary for some movement ring to keep it from spinning, probably. All right. I'm going to press that on all the way around. I'm not wearing any finger protection here, you'll notice, but this is a, it's a quartz movement. It's plastic. And honestly, for a $300 watch, this movement is abysmal. It's, a cheap quartz movement. So, nevertheless, let's see if that fits in the case now. We want to make sure we put it in right. 12 o'clock is there. 12 o'clock is there. We want to set it so that the pushers go in first. Let's try this again. There we go. Nice and centered. $12 o'clock is at 12 o'clock. Let's see if the case back will screw on. Obviously, we've got this movement ring that probably needs to be pressed down a little bit. Let's see if we can do that. Get our handy little blue ball here.
You don't want to leave me with blue balls, do you?
There we go. Now we just have to make sure that the crown is lined up. It appears to be pretty close. But there is a problem here. And I kind of noticed this before, and I need to deal with this. These pushers have extensions inside there that push up against the movement, little clickers that create the on-off for the chronograph and the reset button for the chronograph. And those pushers are too long. I believe that they're up against the case as hard as they can go already, and there's no moving them. So I need to take, and like I said, I noticed this before, and I started thinking about it as I needed to do it. But I need to Dremel those shorter, which I keep saying it, but that may be the hardest part of this whole build because they're in there pretty well, and I'm not sure how to pull these pushers out. And even if I did, I don't think I have the tool to do it. So I have to do that trimming while it's in the watch, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Let me take this off. This movement is designed for a little bit shorter of pushers on those chronograph. See how long these are compared to the other ones? These are very short. Hoping that focuses. Those are very short, and those are very long. So I need to take a Dremel. I need to protect that glass that's in there, and the case, and the threads that you screw into, and all that stuff, and hopefully very carefully trim off maybe a couple millimeters of those pushers. So let me get into that. We'll see how that goes. I think the best way to do this is going to be to use this little cutoff wheel. My main concern, I've used a little, I've got a little plastic disc here that I'm using to place in there to protect my crystal, just in case it slips. But now my only concern is going to be, well, two things. First of all, that the cutoff wheel is going to maybe hit these threads right here for the screw-on back. But more importantly, I think mostly I'm just scared of taking off too much. And then you can't obviously put any back. So let's just take it slow and we'll see how it goes. Okay, that cut pretty easily. I didn't take more than maybe a millimeter or millimeter and a half, let's just say. We'll see how that does. Put that movement back in there. Let's see how that works. I think that's good. I hear clicking as I do that. The problem is that the stem isn't in yet, so let's get that stem in, because none of the functions work without the stem being in place. So let's get that stem inserted, and we'll test all the functions with the back screwed in. We still have to cut this stem to size, but we can do that. There we go. We can do that as after we test all the functions. All right. Stopwatch is functioning. Perfect. This doesn't reset to 12 o'clock because there is there's an adjustment you can do within this movement, and I haven't done that. All right, so let's cut the crown. What we need to do is we need to push this in the closest position, and then take a measurement between this and this. I don't know if you can see that. We're taking a measurement between the case and the back of the crown. And that measurement is 4.5 millimeters, which is the amount we're going to be cutting off of the stem itself. So, all right, so we're going to mark 4.5 millimeters. I do it with a Sharpie. And then while I have this Dremel out, I may as well just use the Dremel.
No! God, please, no! 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 No!
No. Are you kidding me right now? I don't know where the stem went. The stem... I have to look back at the video. I guess the vibration somehow caused this little... I do not have a replacement either.
1 week later.
Okay, now that we've got the stems sorted, we can go on with the final step, which is to put the bezel on. I don't exactly know why they don't do this at the factory. Maybe so that you can put different bezels on it if you choose. The case comes generic and they just throw the bezel in based on what you order. But nevertheless, they give it up to us to put the bezel on. So you got to take this little sticker off. Like that, expose the adhesive. And then very carefully insert this in place. And then press it into the groove. Check for alignment. And it appears good. So now we've got a few different bracelets for this. Like I said, my friend, he wanted some options. So we've got a metal strap. This let's see if we can make it look right without actually installing it, because he wanted me just to install the nylon strap. That's what it's going to look like with the metal strap, but we are doing a nylon strap. Oh, this one's, I was looking for the pins, but this one has built-in pins. It's really nice. Makes it super easy to install. There we go. That's one. And that. It's two. Let's see how this looks. Let's put it on the wrist. There it is. One Omega swatch. Well, if you have any questions, leave it in the comments. I do all kinds of things like this, so subscribe, you know, like, whatever that, I don't care. We'll see you on the next one.